obviously things have been very difficult, to say the least, the last few months. By the way, my name's Damien Qualter, if you're not, if you don't know me from Adam, and I'm just helping on the webinar tonight, and the co-host tonight is Sharka, and we're waiting for Paul Shamplina, our guest speaker, to log in very shortly. So we'll just find a little bit about what's happening in the market while we're waiting for Paul to join in. So what's been happening? How's things been happening generally in the lettings market over the last few months? It's been very difficult times, hasn't it?
It has been, as you can imagine, with many people being furloughed and obviously now a lot of people facing redundancies, and we all know what's been happening. However, having said that, since the businesses started reopening and we've been in work pretty much, we've been allowed to work from about mid-May and move people, the lettings market has been really booming. People were just forced to stay put, and now everybody just wants to move. So that's absolutely excellent. People are moving. There have been some changes in terms of what people want and what they require from the properties, and that's one of the things that I wanted to cover tonight. Do we have Paul?
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, there he is.
Brilliant.
I'm here.
Yes,
You gave me the other code, so I came on as a delegate rather than a panelist, but I'm here.
Okay, great. Hi, Paul. We're just having a little bit of a chit chat while you were logging in, so I'll just introduce you, and we'll get started. We'll kick off. We're very mindful of people's time, so thank you, Paul Shamplina. As that good-looking guy is off the telly. It's a very soulful-looking face there, Paul, on your slide. I love.
Thank you very much. Normally a face for radio. I've been told many times.
Well, I'm not. I think you're being modest there, Paul. And I love the program. I'm a big fan of all these programs, and I watch it all the time. And
right,
co-presenter tonight is Sharka Wild, who's the managing director of Distinct Property Consultants.
Yeah.
And I'll let you introduce yourself, because you do a far better job than I will at introduce you. I'm going to sort of hang back in the background and take any questions and come back in towards the end, if that's okay. So I'll probably go off screen for a little bit.
No problem. Would you like me to introduce myself, or was that?
Yeah, Paul, if you, as you're our special guest of honour, will you?
Yeah, no problem. So, pleasure. So, thank you for inviting me, Damien and Sark. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Paul Shamplina. I worked out during lockdown when we're still. I don't know if we're still in lockdown or not. I don't know. I've lost the plot a little bit. But anyway, I did a webinar yesterday. I've done the best part of 35 webinars and Facebook Lives in this lockdown. Yeah, so a bit of background about me. I've been in property. I've been helping landlords for 27, 28 years. I became a landlord after I started Landlord Action 20 years ago. My background's legal. I've worked in various different recessions, but specialise in landlord and tenant. And I used to be a private investigator and a bailiff. So I've worked in the last two recessions. Obviously, effectively, give or take, maybe we're not officially in recession, but we have to wait and see until what happens towards the end of the year. But obviously, really unprecedented times we're in at the moment. And then, obviously, you know, I fell into the TV. I mean, the first TV program I did actually was in 2001. I actually prefer doing radio, believe it or not, because it's live. I did a radio show on LBC called The Property Hour with Clive Ball, which I really enjoyed. So I do a lot of radio, done loads and loads of TV shows, and obviously Nightmare Tenants, Slum Landlords is the biggest TV program I've done, because I've actually filmed the 6 series, and I can tell you, as of today, it might move, that the brand new 6 series is coming out on the 11th of August. So I've done something like, I think I filmed about 12, 13 stories, all filmed prior to lockdown. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the cases that are on the show are quite extreme cases. They're not normal cases. And of course, I'm sure we'll touch on rent arrears and the court procedure and what's going on, because there's another announcement tomorrow. I literally, before this call, I just did an interview with the Telegraph, and also before that, I had chat with my good friend Ben Beadle, who's the chairman of the CEO and the NRLA. There's conflicting information about new procedures coming in, which I'm sure I'll clear up with Sarka. But 3 years ago, I sold Landlord Action to a company called Hamilton Fraser, and I stayed on as a director of Hamilton Fraser. And Hamilton Fraser own lots of well-known brands within the private rental sector. So we own My Deposits, the deposit scheme, and we act for over 160,000 landlords and 3,500 letting agents. We own the Property Redress scheme, where we've got 14,000 members, letting agent members. It's a mandatory to belong to a redress scheme, so that the landlord and the tenant has redress. Okay. We also own Client Money Protect, which is an insurance so that the consumer, the landlord and tenant are covered if the company goes bankrupt or is wound up, so the deposits are covered. A bit like ABSA when you go on holiday, if the holiday company goes bust. And then other brands, we own obviously Total Landlord Insurance. We do a lot of landlord insurance. That's our core business. Landlord Action, my business, which I sold, which is obviously a regulated law firm, especially on landlord and tenant. And then other businesses, we own a very well-known website called Landlord Zone, which is a great source of information, a breaking news website. We've got over 135,000 members on that. And then we own other brands such as HF Assist, which is a letting agent advice line. We also do letting agent training. I do a lot of training of letting agents and landlords, and consultancy, on one-to-ones if need be. And then we have another brand called OME, OME, which is a zero deposit replacement scheme, so that a tenant will pay 1 week's rent equivalent on a monthly basis, a bit like Netflix, and it insures them for the 5 weeks deposit, so it helps the tenant have more money in their bank, and that's becoming a lot more popular. So there are other things that we're doing. I'm pretty busy all the time, but that's roughly what I do. And I've always, and still to this day, 20 years later, campaign quite vigorously for landlords and help landlords.
Well, for that reason, Paul, the amount of activities that you do, I'm really grateful that you spared an hour of your life and came to talk to our landlords about all the changes. And as you have said, and I hope that we will cover those, there have been certain changes, especially about the suspended evictions, and it's not completely clear cut where we are going forward from here, is it? So shall we perhaps cover the basics for people in terms of what has happened? We obviously know about Coronavirus Act. We know that these days, if landlord wants to take big possession, whether it's through Section 21 or Section 8, it's a 3-month notice. And there are some further updates in terms of the courts. I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are about 62,000 pending cases at the moment for the courts to start processing.
Yeah. So I mean, look, the changes. So because of the coronavirus, there was an act that was brought in, an emergency act brought in, and what the government didn't want, there was a whole glut of evictions because people were losing jobs and obviously suffered financially because of the coronavirus. So obviously we have furloughing. I mean, at the moment there's 3.7 million people on universal credit. 1.2 million people applied for universal credit during lockdown. But, I think in the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, I was getting inundated from landlords panicking because tenants weren't paying the rent. And also I was speaking to tenants giving advice to landlords. So the first things first, let's talk about non-payment of rent, because obviously that's the biggest landlord fear. There's 5 things that a landlord really keeps awake at night. One is obviously rent arrears. 2 is void periods, empty properties. And that's why I wrote a book with a lady called Kate Faulkner called The Landlord's Friend. You have a lot of landlords that are self-manage. I think that you need to take stock and look to see actually, do you want to take these various calls of lost keys and boilers broken down, or do you want an agent to take care and give you a peace of mind? But obviously picking the right letting agents after is essential. And there is more legislation coming in for letting agents called ROCA, which is regulation of property agents. And we are constantly, my organisation, Hamilton Fraser, we are constantly engaging with the government. So I'm on 3 consultations or 4 consultations now I'm working with. I mean, yesterday I took a call from the Ministry of Justice about ex-offenders being rehoused in the private rental sector, and I'm advising on that, on how to, how to pitch it to landlords and how to do that. And I'm also speaking to the Ministry of Justice about the Legal Services Act, about evictions, and about what companies are doing it, and what it's going to look like when the courts reopen up on the 24th. So let me just give you a brief as to what's happened. So as of the 24th of March, the government basically said, if you want to evict a tenant, up to the end of the 30th of September, if you're going to serve a notice, the notice period is 3 months. So a Section 8, a rent arrears notice, which is breach of tenancy, normally for rent arrears, is normally a 14-day notice. That's now 3 months. Normally, one would serve a 2-month notice called a Section 21 to end the contract. They call that non-fault, but there normally is a fault. That's been moved to 3 months. So for a couple of months at Landlord Action, we were quite quiet. Now, generally, with Landlord Action, and our website is landlordaction.co.uk, we run, we've got 500 to 550 cases, current cases stuck in the court system that were all pre-COVID cases. So then they stopped. So what the government said, we're going to suspend all current cases in the court system. So cases couldn't be heard. There couldn't be evictions. There was no orders with regard to possession orders. No applications could be dealt with. So they put everything on hold, and that was until the end of June. And then the courts were going to open up the end of June. And then there was campaigning by a lot of tenants groups saying, no, we want the suspension to go further. And now there was a further suspension until the 23rd of August. It's now confirmed that the courts will reopen the 24th of August. And as I've said, and I've got a press release, a comment tomorrow, you'll literally see one in the morning on Landlord Zone, a comment. The landlords that have cases, current cases in the court system, are the ones that are going to lose out the most. I mean, we've got landlords that have got rent arrears of over a year by the time they would get possession. I had one landlord who owed £22,000, and 2 days before the eviction, she got a letter from the court to say it had been suspended. That was early April. So what's going to happen is, on the 24th of August, the courts are going to open up. There's going to be a lot of backlogs, all right, inevitably in various different courts. And I can tell you now, I'm on, prior to COVID-19, I was on some consultation work with regard to the banning of Section 21, because that is happening. I reckon within 18 months that's going to happen. I was on another consultation called, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail about why the government are doing that. And of course, they're going to strengthen Section 8. So they, from 17 grounds, there'll be 22 grounds. You need, for anything to work and to ban Section 21, you need major investment in the court system. And that's been my big worry. And I think with COVID-19, it's going to bring it to the fore. You're going to see that how the courts will cope. Because they were talking about housing courts. And I basically said all along, you need more resource. There needs to be a lot more communication with regard to how the process is, what the tenants need to do. You need more judges, you need more bailiffs. And I know from, I think it was maybe last November, I went up to Leeds on the housing court consultation, and I spoke to a judge, and she said it takes 15 minutes to look through an accelerated possession case. Well, actually, I know 10, 12 years ago, it used to be 90 seconds, because of course, you know, Section 21 cases, a lot of landlords use Section 21, even if there's rent arrears, or there's antisocial behaviour, because it's easy to get the property back. But what they don't do is they don't enforce the money order. They write off the money, and they don't pursue it at court. I had the government in my office. I literally invited them in my office, the civil servant, and I said, do you know about the unintended consequences? And that is that a lot of tenants are rehoused by the council because the council tell them to stay put. I mean, it's very common, and you'll know that as an agent, Sarka. You'll have scenarios where tenants will have advice by the council to say, stay put, wait to eviction, get the letter from the bailiff, come and see us, and we will see where we can rehouse you, because you have not made yourself homeless. But what happens is, those Section 21 cases, and a vast majority of them are rent arrears cases, if they get switched to Section 8, then all of a sudden, when you have to go to Section 8, you have to claim for the rent arrears. The rent arrears will show up on the money order, and when the tenant is being evicted, they show the council the possession order with the Section 8 and the rent arrears. The council will turn and say, hold on a second, you've made yourself homeless, you haven't paid the rent. so we can't rehouse you. So there's a big issue with regard to that. And of course, what the ground's now going to be is that if you need to move back in your property, you need to sell it. These are going to be added grounds. And a lot of the grounds, I mean, the tenant groups wanted loads of grounds to be changed to discretionary grounds rather than mandatory. I mean, there's only 2 mandatory grounds at the moment. So that all needs to be revamped. And I personally think if getting rid of Section 21 is going to be one of the biggest things to ever happen in the private rental sector. Forget about Section 24 and right to rent and all these different things. Because if you don't get it right, you will see landlords exit the marketplace if they think they can't get their property back. That's why the Housing Act 1988 came in, because there was rent protected tenants and you couldn't get them out easier. So in Scotland, they had indefinite tenancies, but they are having big problems with their first tier tribunal chamber because they can't cope with the cases, and they offered it for free. And you know, we have a business in Scotland. We do protections for letting agents in Scotland, and one of our Scottish reps said that, you know, the tribunal up there can't cope with cases of landlords pursuing tenants for £30 deposit disputes and just meaningless cases like that. So, you know, landlords, you know, the government want tenants to have greater security. COVID-19 has changed a lot, and literally just on an update with regard to the eviction and what's happened now is there is a massive emphasis with regard to pre-action protocol mediation. So we have a mediation business which we started in lockdown for the property redress scheme, the prs.co.uk, where we do mediation between landlords and tenants and try and work out an instalment plan or whether the tenant will vacate the property sooner rather than later, because landlords know they're in for 6 to 9 to 12 months to evict a tenant because of the delays, Saka. So it's better to try and do a deal, see if you can get the property back and you're not in for that big wait.
And that's pretty much, Paul, that we've been doing with our clients wherever we had the tenants who couldn't pay rent. We've been trying as an agent to work out with them a payment plan, and also to make sure, also talk to them, almost like counseling on, well, okay, if you are without job, you just don't want to be mounting the debt because eventually you will need to pay it somehow. And so we've been pretty much working with the tenants, try to explain to them that it's better to make that repayment plan, because we also understand that it will be absolutely difficult and it will take a long time for the landlord to recover it. A lot of times when you speak to the tenants and explain them the consequences of not paying that rent, a lot of times they get it because they don't want to get impacted by CCJ, by debt, because then you are pretty much for 6 years affected. Because of your credit goes nowhere. So that was on our side as an agent. But say that you had, for example, a tenant, and that was one of the questions that one of the landlords raised, where you have a tenant who actually you didn't have to serve them Section 21 or Section 8. They just moved out, but they left areas behind that.
Yeah, I think the reality is now with where we've. I mean, I've never seen so much landlord and tenant engagement, and I've seen landlords do amazing things. And I'm currently doing a campaign with the National Residential Landlords Association, which I do recommend landlords to join without a doubt for £75 a year. It's a complete and utter no-brainer with all the updates and everything they need to do. But landlords need to put a price on their time, because most landlords work full time. To keep up to date with over 170 rules and regulation, that's what you're paying your letting agent to do for you. But with regard to mediation, I think that there's a lot more empathy and a lot more sympathy between landlords and tenants, okay, because of COVID-19. And obviously we know unemployment's going to shoot up. We know, obviously, you've seen how the work with key workers at NHS has done, and it's put a lot of things into perspective with regard to human mankind. And I think I've seen a lot of much more engagement, and I get annoyed when I read a lot, and I do put myself out there, and I have done for a number of years, when I see greedy landlord this, greedy landlord that. I mean, I even set up a section on Landlord Zone called Landlord Hero, about, we have landlords that were given rent-free periods and buying tenants food and all these amazing things that were happening. So mediation makes sense. I mean, since we've started, which was about 2-3 months ago, the mediations over the PRS, and we act for individual landlords, letting agents, insurance companies. Half the mediations we've done, we've settled, which has been great. So, I mean, the government are really going to push pre-action protocol. At the moment, what pre-action protocol is, it's now a process in the social housing sector with regard to tenants in arrears in social housing, which is housing associations and councils. Now what they're doing is they're encouraging, the legislation hasn't come in, it will come in further down the line, and it's a procedure where the landlord or the agent has to find out why the tenant's gone in arrears. Are they vulnerable? Can they speak English and actually understand the contract? Can they read? I mean, I know it sounds crazy. Do they have mental health issues? Do they need to apply for benefit? What's the instalment plan they can do? What can they pay over a reasonable amount of time? You need to send them a schedule. This all needs to be documented to show that you've tried to engage with the tenant. Now, the problem that we've got, Sarkar, and this is legislation that's literally come out the last couple of days, they are now saying for current court cases, the landlords that have got cases in the court system. So you've got landlords that may have served notice, okay? And let's be very clear, 98% of tenants are absolutely fine. Yeah, you get deposit disputes, and we have all that, with my deposits. But yes, rent arrears are shooting up, are going to shoot up. And yes, there's obviously the furloughing, and obviously when that stops, there's going to be a real reality check. And the reality is, unfortunately, every business, because of this crisis, is going to change the way they work, and they're going to look at how they do things. They're going to look at costs. They're going to think, well, hold on, we can be a lot more efficient now. And actually, the social the commercial market, property market, which I said very, very early on will be the worst hit, and it is, and it will be. The residential market that's been worst hit has been the student market, because of course you've got universities shut for a year. You've got students that don't want to go to the rental properties; they want to stay at the family home. Okay, you've got then obviously there's guarantors in place. There's a big issue with student tenancies. Okay. And of course, you've got HMOs where you might have foreign nationals or tenants that have lost their jobs because they were in various different sectors like retail or hospitality or catering, and actually, so that's an issue with HMOs. So there's a lot of challenges. It is about cash flow, and it is about working with your tenants. So mediation is going to feature heavily, but there was a new law that's just come in with regard to reactivation notice, where the landlord or the letting agent or the solicitors, which obviously we are, have to write to the court to say we want to reactivate the court case to make sure that it's going to be in the system, because throughout this process we have been issuing claims at courts. You can issue claims at courts, so you can get a case number, and then you're in a queue, and then it depends as to what your court you're at. And don't forget, you need and then what they're going to do is they're going to put spaces between hearings, so there's no block listings, so there is going to be people turning up to court. So that everything, the way it's changed, they need more judges. But what they have done, and it's a bit conflicting, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it, is that they are expecting landlords that currently have cases in the court system to reach out to their tenants to find out the up-to-date situation with regard to their tenants, with regard to their finances, with regard to their vulnerability, and with regard to their health issues of COVID-19. And I said, practicality, that's not really going to happen, because by the time you go to court, the landlord and the tenant's relationship has broken down, and most tenants will not want to engage with their landlords because they owe them money, or it's broken down for whatever reason. So, and then actually, and you'll see a story that's going to be on Landlord Zone tomorrow morning, and we've seen this from something written by the housing department and government, that actually, if a landlord hasn't done this, and there needs to be a tick box exercise to say the tenant hasn't engaged, and I hope that is going to be the scenario, that if that hasn't been done, then that current case gets adjourned. So it's going to cause even further delays. I mean, this is going to be very trying, testing times, because landlords that have currently got cases in the system, they're now waiting for a queue, and they're going to wait for the tap to get turned on, and they're going to hope that they're further up the queue rather than down the queue, so that their case will be heard sooner rather than later. And then obviously they will get some sort of possession order. And I'm sure there's going to be a directive that the judges have had, because of course, yes, there's got to be compassion, but I really do feel, and I've been quite outspoken, especially when I speak to landlords, I think the saving grace for landlords, Sarkar, is that the interest rate is really, really low. And of course, what the government did introduce, they said that, you know, if you're a tenant, ask your landlord to see if you can have a holiday, a rent holiday. It was not a rent holiday, it's a deferment. You're still liable for the rent. And some landlords were going to their mortgage company to say, a lot of landlords can afford not to, can still pay the mortgage, because a lot of them are obviously on low mortgage terms. But what the conflicting information is, depending on the borrowers, is that if you did ask your lender for a mortgage holiday, actually that could go against you with regard to your credit rating, because it was it was a default payment. So that's been quite worrying, and that was really unclear from some of the lenders, and also the FCA said it shouldn't affect. So they put provisions in place. We're in an unprecedented time with regard to support and government support, but the money needs to be paid back sometime. And of course, the slashing of stamp duty has obviously caused and created a bounce, which has been good. But I think there will be a bit of a reality check maybe towards the end of the year when the furloughing stops. But obviously, a lot of people will take benefit from obviously the stamp duty allowances that are in place.
Yes, that's been pretty much our concern as letting agents, whilst the market is at the moment very buoyant because there is still pent-up demand and people want to move. I was talking about it just before you joined the call. Naturally, when furloughing finishes and a lot of people will be made redundant and will not have jobs to go to, there will be obviously a lot of people on universal credit. But also the landscape of the demand is a little bit changing. I don't know what about in the area where you are, but we've seen certainly much less interest in flats or HMOs, and it's partially, for example, HMOs are usually occupied by people, people going to the jobs, the new jobs, and those jobs are not there. But also people are worried that if there was another lockdown and they would get stuck in flats, so we had to, for example, readjust prices on some flats. Houses are fine, there are no issues. But naturally, talking also about redundancies and about universal credit, that leads me to the recent ruling that you are surely aware of, where the lady on benefit was refused tenancy. And I would like you to talk about that little bit, because as you know, I'm landlord myself, as you are, and on the top of it, I run a letting agency. And the one thing is, the landlords, they are not generally against having people on benefit. They are worried that they will not get paid rent, that for some reason that
that's right.
And that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my view on this. I did a radio interview last week, Sarka, on BBC Radio London with Eddie Nesta about the new ruling of discrimination with regard to no DSS. I mean, my personal view is that a DSS tenant statistically stays in the property longer, looks after the property better. Okay, there's a bit of a myth with regard to benefit payments. I mean, my sister, she's a single mother. She's on part benefits. I'm her guarantor. I mean, if I was entertaining having a benefit tenant, I'd look obviously for a guarantor, which makes total sense. The problem we've got, okay, is universal credit has been a complete and utter mess, okay, and the benefit system has been. I mean, believe it or not, the benefit payments a year are £24 billion paid to housing, which a third of them relate to the private rental sector. And believe it or not, less than 20% of universal credit is paid directly to landlords, which is absolutely scandalous. So the biggest fear for a landlord is they don't get direct payment, and it goes to the tenant, and they end up spending it, or they can't manage their money. I mean, a lot of tenants would say, please pay my landlord direct, because of course I don't want to be evicted. I don't want my rental arrears to build up. And of course there are provisions in place for direct payment if your tenant has mental health issue, drink, drugs. One thing they don't pick up is debts. They don't understand the debt situation. The council don't really tell you. So the problem you've got is we have a social housing crisis. The social housing sector stands at about 16%. The private rental sector about 21%. So the private rental sector really has been the sticking plaster for the social housing sector. And I think, and I said quite early on again into this lockdown, I mean, yesterday when I was speaking to the Ministry of Justice about the provisions they want to try and do of getting ex-offenders in the private rental sector, and it's a hard sell. So obviously I've given them some ideas, and you need obviously some provisions in place and some safeguarding in place of direct payment. But, you know, paying it 5 weeks in arrears doesn't make sense, okay? Having direct payment does make sense, and they would have a lot more landlords that would sign up to it. I've had many landlords, and we've done many cases where tenants have kept the benefits themselves, okay? A lot of, you know, and you've got to think housing benefit tenants, universal credit tenants, you know, having a property, maybe the right property, they realise that they are in the right property, and they don't want to make, tenants want security, and that's across the board. That's very important.
It's we all do, don't we? Ultimately, your home is your basic security that you need from in life, and and it's really important. And talking about benefits, actually, you are in when you were talking about your sister, we often when we speak to our clients say, we've got a benefit application, we look at it, and if the applicant cannot meet financial criteria because rent is higher than what they could qualify with their benefits, then we would ask for guarantor. And as long as you can get guarantor.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, the problem you've got is it's economic, Sarka. So, you know, the LHA rates went up about 13%, which was pretty good. But, you know, let's give you an example, right? So, you know, you cover Wiltshire and North Oxfordshire, correct?
North Oxfordshire, Warwickshire. And,
Warwickshire, right. So okay. So you've got a tenant. You find a tenant. They're on universal credit. Okay. The rent for the property is £800 a month, for argument's sake. Okay. The universal credit comes in at £600 or £650 a month. You rely on the tenant to do the top up. You hope you're going to have direct payment. You might have had a landlord that might have had a poor experience previously with a universal credit or a housing benefit tenant, and normally once a poor experience, you don't want to get twice bitten. But then you find a tenant, you find a couple that are private tenants, both work, okay, and the rent's £800 a month, and their income can afford it. Which tenant do you go for? And unfortunately, that's where it is. But with regard to the prejudice, and we're coming back to this court case of no DSS, okay, I think that it was quite archaic of saying no DSS and saying on the phone. Agents as well say it on the phone. I think what is going to happen, you will get a lot of landlords and agents qualifying better, but it will be an unsaid thing. I think that's a reality. And of course, with rents rising, you know, I actually think rents will come down a little bit. I think landlords will be realistic with regard to some of their offerings, because they won't want properties to be empty. The problem you've got with some of the tenants in maybe towards the end of the year, if you do have tenants that are losing their jobs, and you know, I think there's still a lot of job creation out there that will happen. They have to change a lot of industries. You'll get tenants that won't be able to move, and of course their referencing will change. So, you know, if you're looking at referencing and looking at a tenant, if they're on furlough, you know, that may look at possibly being a weakness. So I think, you know, the issue is, I think I know a lot of landlords that have great relationships with the councils, and they went out just to tenants and DSS. I think no DSS, I think that was quite a good move, actually, right ruling. I mean, everyone will know about the infamous landlord called Fergus Wilson. And I've done many press comments and radio interviews relating to him. And he didn't just stop there. I mean, he went right down the list. No single mothers, no, you know, shocking, you know, no people that eat curries. I mean, you can't believe that we're in this century with this landlord, and he gives landlords a bad name. But so I think it was quite a good ruling, but I think that it will be more subtle. And I think that unless the government changed the way that universal credit is paid, and believe it or not, it was in 2008, which was the Labour government, of the idea of direct payment was made to tenants because it was about empowerment to feel part of the marketplace. It was one of the worst ideas that actually happened, really. So yeah, I think, you know, every case is different, and actually, you know, housing a family that may be on social, or just housing a family per se, and housing someone in your property, I think it's a really good thing, you know. And you want a tenant to treat your property and see their property as their home, because if they see it as their home, they're staying in the property longer. You want a property to be looked after and a tenant to pay on time. I mean, just one thing I'll throw out to you, Saka. Do you know? I'm gonna throw a little question at you now, as you're a letting agent. No pressure, okay? We might have a drum roll. Is there a drum roll, Damien, in the background?
I think
we can always add one.
Damien, I thought you were asleep. I was just testing you.
You woke me up.
Okay, I always make sure that I'm testing my co-host to make sure they haven't fallen asleep when I'm speaking. I have that effect sometimes. So, but basically, do you know that what's the average term of a tenancy for a tenant staying in a property prior to COVID-19? Anyone have a guess?
18
well,
months.
I can just. Sorry.
18 months.
18 months.
Yeah.
I guess.
I wanted to say based on our tenancies, and I'm just going by ours, about 2.5 years.
So no, it's actually 4 years and 3 months.
Wow.
That was prior to lockdown, and that was from the English Housing Survey. So there's a myth. I mean, tenants want greater security. You can't force longer term tenancies on landlords, but actually it's happening, and most landlords want tenants to stay longer in the property. You know, but everything has to be joined up. You know, the banning of the Section 21, that's definitely going to happen. I can see landlord registration happening following Wales and following in Scotland. There will be landlord redress coming in. I know that's going to happen, where as a landlord, if you don't have a letting agent that's managing, the tenant, you know, the problem that goes wrong is landlords don't see their tenants as customers, and they are, because they pay you income. You know, and actually the same with letting agents. We had the tenant fee ban, and obviously a lot of agents were really unhappy. But you know what? You know, if you're being truthful, you know, letting agents were charging tenants a fee, an admin fee. And what is the admin fee? Well, the admin fee is a reference and the drafting of the tenancy agreement, and then you'd be charging the landlord on a let only or fully managed for the drafting of a tenancy agreement and the referencing and obviously all the other stuff. So it was a double charge, and the government got fed up with that. And I understand that. I think there should have been a cap. So I think that, you know what, letting agents for historically have undercharged. You know,
this is Paul. If I can say from my experience, obviously, because. The biggest problem now that we've seen, or not problem, but the change that we've seen, because there is a tenancy fees ban and you can't charge anything to the tenant, that cost is absorbed by the landlord.
They put the rent. I mean, the agents would be agents should be putting their rates up, and actually, will landlords put the rents up? I mean, long term, you know, the tenants will be paying it back in rents.
Yes, naturally, and frankly, if you think about it, now with the tenancy fees ban, the landlords have to absorb the cost, because with increased legislation, the letting agent cannot work for free, because there is much more paperwork to do and everything.
Loads more paperwork, and actually, letting agents are compliance officers now. That's why I say if you're landlord self-managing, you have to join the National Residential Landlords Association, which is nrla.org.uk, or you have to find a letting agent. I mean, you know, you've got to realise half the business at Landlord. So we act in our business at Hamilton Fraser for over 16,500 letting agents in the country. One of the biggest organisations that act, because of course we've got all the mandatory schemes and the letting, and then obviously Landlord Action and HF Assist, which is the letting agent advice line. It's so important for a landlord. It's actually, as well as buying a property, actually, if you're going to get a letting agent, yes, let only, that's fine. You know, the problem you have with a lot of letting agents on let only, when they know they haven't got the management, they most probably aren't as diligent with regard to putting in a tenant as they should be, because of course they just want to do the deal. Maybe they get a renewal. I think the days of a let-only letting agent, I think will I think they're going to be numbered. I really think the days will be numbered. And I think, you know what, if I'm a landlord and I want a let-only, because of course you have to do all the compliance stuff, right, beforehand. And if you get it wrong, you're on the hook as the agent. And I think it will get to the stage where, the reason why landlords go to letting agents, because they get pre-qualified and better tenants, and they would do the tenancy agreements better, and they would do that. And I think there's still a lot of work you do on let owning, but I think it will get to a stage where actually, Sarkis, a landlord will say to you, right, let only, here's the tenant, a pre-qualified referencing, he's a great tenant, I'll pass it on, but you draft the tenancy agreement, you do the deposit in the deposit scheme. And that's why I never understand when there's a difference between, I train letting agents. I did some training this morning for letting agents. So I train letting agents on how to attract landlords to your business. I do a lot of those type of training courses. And unfortunately, a lot of, and you're a landlord as well, Sarkis, so that makes sense. You understand. And a lot of time, you've got a lot of letting agents that started their businesses and they're landlords because they had a poor service. And they think, you know what, I want to do it, and I want to do it like this. And I understand. So I think, the amount of time a letting agent spends on advertising the property, viewing, putting tenants in, doing the paperwork, managing, doing the rent roll, doing the compliance, the check-in, the check-out, deposit. It's hours and hours and hours. And I did put a question to Property Mark Arlo and David Cox. And I said to him, do a survey and find out how much time, because letting agents don't shout about themselves enough to landlords, and landlords don't realise the amount of work that puts in. And if you're paying a management fee on, 12%, but whatever it may be, and you divide it on a monthly basis to what the rent is, it's peanuts. It
is, and that's what a lot of people don't realize, because it's that compliance. And I can tell you that I've counted how many hours we spend on actually from advertising to securing the tenant, and depending on the property, it can be 15, it can be 17 hours, 18 hours.
Yeah.
If you think about it commercially, if I need to pay my staff, and now talking about ROPA, I just will explain what ROPA means, because we know the jargon, but people who are listening to the webinar don't, which stands for Regulation of Property Agents, and it's something that government is bringing for everybody in this industry to be qualified. And if you think about those regulations, the agents will have to have qualified staff, which costs money. So if you want to provide good service to the landlord, you cannot do it on cheap. You know the expression pay peanuts, get monkeys, or something like that.
Yeah, the thing is with ROPA, and actually my colleague is on that consultation. He's on that board that they're putting that together. Regulation of property agents has been on the radar, and everything needs to be joined up, and there is a lot of stuff that's coming through. But having a letting agent is qualified, so they're looking at maybe an agent might have to have 15 hours CPD. So for argument's sake, I'm putting an event on for Hamilton Fraser, for letting agents actually. You might be interested, so I can do it. Where it's 3 CPD points for half a day. And as of today, I think we've got 165 people paid up. We're doing it for £25 plus VAT. We're doing a half day course, but you've got to do the CPD accreditation, and it is going to be expensive. So so that's why we at Hamilton Fraser, what we've done is when we do the training, I make sure it's really, really practical. So we did last year, we did 7 letting agent events, and the year before that about 4. So we do letting agent training with a lady called Susie Caroli, who's really, really good and practical. I think it's really important to understand on a practical vision. And that's why we started the advice line, HF Assist, So it is going to change, and you will see agents possibly exit the marketplace, or you'll see directors that will, because directors also have an obligation with regard to their staff. So it's expensive, and the training has to come down. So, I'm hoping that my organisation, Hamilton Fraser and HF Assist, we're looking we'd like to be one of our a training provider in the future, because there'll be a lot of trainers that need to train letting agents, and it can only be a good thing. It raises the standard of the industry.
So, obviously we covered all that, and naturally, because of the regulations of property agents, as you already touched it, if, for example, landlord decides to continue self-managing, they naturally will need some sort of certification as well as you mentioned, as it's happening in Wales, because you've got, for example, Smart Wales. I've got some buy-to-lets in Wales. So I'm aware of that, and then landlord can choose what is important to me. I've got here my investment. Will I have it as a hands-off investment, and will I get agent to manage it, or will I get into it myself, and will I educate myself, and will I go to various trainings, etc., etc.
Yes, correct.
About deciding the priorities, what is important for the landlord. Will I focus on my career, on my work and family, and will I make my investment work for me and let agent work for me, or will I do it myself? But if I do it myself, I will need naturally.
Yeah, but I mean, but Saki, if you live in, Warwickshire and whatever, and you obviously you've got a few properties in Wales, wherever they might be, Cardiff, Swansea, Newport, wherever it may be, are you really going to manage it yourself? You're going to drive all that time to do an inspection?
I am personally paying agent over there because I'm
exactly
here.
But the key is, but Saki, the key is finding a good agent, and that's the hardest thing. So, I mean, let me give your guys some tips that are online about finding a good agent, which is really what I would do. And as you know, I train landlords, I train letting agents. Is firstly, wherever your property is, you find obviously what's the reputation of that company, that letting agent, because of course you go in the high street, there's 10 agents. Which one do you use? A lot of landlords, unfortunately, and you'll know this as being a letting agent, are very price conscious. Okay, but my motto is cheap is always expensive. Okay, so basically you need to make sure they belong to a redress scheme. Obviously, either ours, the property redress scheme, or the TPO. They've got client money protection insurance in place, which was a very good law that came in a year ago to make sure that you're covered. Are they part of a trade body? Okay, so you know that they're getting training. Okay. Go on a website called allagents.co.uk so you can get reviews on the letting agent as to the landlords and tenants about that company. Go into their office if you can. What's their case management system? How quickly do they pass the money? What do you get for your full management fee? What are their terms of business? I mean, that's a starter, because the most frequently questions that you'll get asked, Saka, as an agent will be, how quickly can you rent this, and how much can you rent it for? Yeah, I mean and then how much will you charge? They're the three most popular questions that you get. So you have to be realistic. So doing diligence on your letting agent is really, really important. Okay, don't just give your keys over. And actually, what's the difference between let only and full management? And actually, you know what? Everyone's busy. Everyone forgets about doing stuff. There's more and more regulation now. Letting agents have to have the expense of case management systems, property management systems. Tech is really, really important. How do you report repairs? There's so much an agent has to do, and it's hard work. And letting agents and managing agents really are unsung heroes to make sure that a property pays. And landlords forget that. Landlords really forget that, and they forget about the nitty gritty, the messy stuff that you have to do as a landlord. And if you're scaling up, then you might think about, if I've got so many properties, I might do the management in-house, but is it really worth it? So you take a view, and it depends on your stock, and it depends where it is, and it depends. We're in a people's business, very much so. And my motto is, a happy tenant, a happy landlord, hopefully.
I agree with that. I always say, if you treat tenant right, tenant will look after your property, and then you will get a higher return on the investment because they stay longer and they look after it.
Correct. And actually, you know what? I mean, even if you've got a tenant in your property and they're a good tenant, do you have to put the rent? I mean, I've got a tenant in Spain. I've had in my property for about 6-7 years in Spain. Not that that was a good investment, but that's another story. And I haven't put the rent up for 4 years. You know, I don't. And actually, there's a motto. I say it all the time. Say it all the time. You know, no news is good news. Okay, as long as your rent is being paid, okay, and your tenant is looking after your property, and you're getting inspections and you can get it looked at, it's very important. You know, because of course that's what you want. But we are in unprecedented times. Okay, there's a lot of compassion that has to come out. And really, if you can work with your tenant, work with your tenant, you know, and work it through. But then it comes to a point of where the rent gets, you know, if it is rent arrears, the rent arrears accrue and they get bigger and bigger. And then, of course, unfortunately, the tenant can't afford to be in your property. And you, as a landlord, are not a bank, you know, and you have to make a commercial decision. You know, it is a people's business. Do you want to? Is there any questions? Because I'm conscious of time. We're almost at the end.
Yes, I think Damien, you've got some questions from people, don't you?
Yeah, I have. I'm back here. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, so I've got some questions here. So, a couple of questions come in, and if anyone else has got any questions, please just put them in the chat box, and we'll get through them all. So, you touched on this, Paul, during the talk, but just what do you think now is the current lead time? We've got a question of if someone was trying to evict someone from a property, how long, in reality, do you think it would take?
Okay, good question. I got asked that yesterday as well. So you've got a 3-month notice being served, as we know. So you're in for 3 months.
Yeah.
You're in for another 6 months on top, I reckon, give or take. 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where we're at the moment. And you know, until I hear, and I'm going to hear more information tomorrow because I know someone on the judicial working group, so I get a bit more information and dealing with backlog. I mean, if there was a time of investment in the court system, it's now. And we were saying this prior with the banning of Section 21, because of course you need investment in the court system. You need to make sure the Section 8, and there, you know, and if you want longer tenancies, you need to make sure it works. Now, because of COVID-19, we need to see where we're at, and we hope things don't fall down. So I know they had a lot of lead up time to try and plan and work and, you know, get back to work, which effectively is the courts reopening. You've got to realise, I mean, we were doing, at Landlord Action, we might be doing 30 to 40 hearings a month. We have loads of hearings. So we have advocates that do the hearings. So that will start up again. They looked at doing the virtual. I mean, I spoke to a lady this morning that I was doing some training with, and she's a magistrate. And she was telling me they were trying to do virtual hearings on the magistrate, and she said it just didn't work. It was a nightmare. The signal kept going out. The solicitor was trying to speak to his client. He couldn't do. You know, it was just a nightmare. So I'm waiting to hear how things are going to happen. You know, and of course, I think the way that we respond and how things happen may shape up whether there's going to be a housing court further down the line, because obviously that was at consultation stage. By the way, I can't see the screen because obviously I'm audio. Is my slide up so people can see my contact details?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely,
yes,
fine. Thank you.
A whole hour.
Oh, has it? Oh, I haven't scared anyone off, have I? My picture.
we put your pretty face on so people can get benefit of seeing you while you are talking.
Can you imagine being a tenant? Because what was when I film? I mean, I'll say to the film crew, right, I'll see you at 6 in the morning at blah blah place, you know, and I might leave at 4. I mean, you've got to realize I do so much filming. At the moment, just quickly, I'm editing. I'm putting on old episodes of Nightmare Tenants on YouTube channel, and I'm editing them. And I said to the guy, Ben, I'm doing it with. I'm now on the 3rd session tomorrow. I've got 3 more episodes. So there was 5 series of 62 episodes in total, a lot. And I'm up to 19 episodes, and I want to get down to 8 or 10. So I don't know how I'm going to do it. And now the new series out, but yeah, seeing my ugly face at 6 in the morning is a bit of a tenant's nightmare, I suppose.
Okay. And another question is what's the sort of approximate cost of going through the eviction process with someone like yourself handling on behalf?
Yeah. So all in all, we charge. Thanks, Daniel. All in all, we charge £1,400 approximately, give or take. So we charge £120 plus that to serve the notice. Okay. An extra fee if you want it hand delivered by a process server at the property, because tenants will deny receiving it. Then we charge another fee to carry on from that notice, £975. That includes court fee, R fee, advocate fee, and VAT. That's to get you the possession order at court. We do everything. Now filling in court papers is harder than ever, believe you me, especially all the new legislation stuff. They're changing all the court papers and the compliance stuff, and you can't believe them. It's obviously, you know, I issued, just to show you how old I am, right? I issued my first possession claim in 1991 when I worked in a firm of solicitors, right? And it was completely different, as you can imagine. I mean, the accelerated possession proceedings didn't start until about 97, 98 or something like that, if I remember rightly. And then the bailiff stage is about £300. So you pay per step, and 55% of the time prior to COVID, the tenants will pay up or leave. I mean, what we're doing now is we're serving eviction notices, and we're also instructing our mediation service. So our mediation service, we charge, I think, £500 all in, 3 different steps. But if you go on the prs.co.uk mediation, you can see the mediation service, or you can go on Landlord Action, landlordaction.co.uk. I mean, we fix squatters, we do all that. I mean, we are like emergency plumbers. No one really wants to call us, but you know that we're there.
That's very good. Okay. Another question is, if a tenant's left owing arrears, what's the best way to pursue them for the arrears?
You know what? 85% of the time, you'll never get the money from the tenant. Okay, because a lot of tenants don't have anything. Okay, that's why they're renting. You've got to trace them. So you've got to find out. You know, we're 3 to 6 months. You've got to get them to come out, resurface through the court system. There's going to be changes on debt collection now because of COVID-19. Everything is changing, believe you me. But then, you know, one thing that has changed since when I started the business is social media. Everyone talks about themselves. Everyone goes and stuff. So going on LinkedIn, going on Instagram, going on Twitter, all that, Facebook. Finding out where your tenant is, that helps you, and that doesn't cost anything. But we have a trace and debt recovery service at Landlord Action as well, so we do all that for fixed fees. So again, if you put debt recovery Landlord Action, go on our website. We do the fixed fees, and we have 2 solicitors and paralegals that just focus on debt recovery work, collecting the money. You know, getting an attachment of earnings. When you enforce a money order, then it becomes a registered county court judgment. Other than that, if you have a Section 8 case at court on a money order, it's not a CCJ. It doesn't show up. So then if your tenant goes off and he went somewhere else, unfortunately, the new suspecting landlord doesn't get that information. So we have landlords that will enforce just to make sure that it shows up on the tenant's credit rating. But a lot of times tenants will get away with it. So, you know, sometimes, and I sound really cynical now, and I do apologise, sometimes trying to collect a debt against a tenant, that you have 2 hopes, Bob Hope and no hope. You know, we have collected, don't get me wrong, but it's really challenging. And I come and I say to a landlord, I say, right, we're going to charge you £700 or £800. You know, we have to charge a freight and whatever, yeah. And maybe we might get something, and maybe we'll enforce a judgment for a £700-800, and they get a CCJ because we know where they've moved to, because you have to pursue them at a new address. Or you can think, I'm not going to pursue it. Yeah, they fell on hard times. I've gone into the property, and now I can see loads of posts. Everyone's chasing my tenant who's got loads of debt. You know, can I collect the money? So then, do I use the £800 to pay a painter and decorator and get it, you know, and get the property going again and try and recoup some money? I mean, it's the nature of the game, unfortunately. You know, obviously, if you are owed a debt, you offset against, you know, your tax anyway because it's a loss.
Sure.
It's a commercial decision that each landlord has to take depending on how much money that particular tenant owes.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
If that tenant say owes several months of rent, you know,
yeah.
And in some areas you put very high rent, so
yes.
Can end up easily with 10,000-15,000 rent areas, and then what do you do? Do you actually pay somebody like you £1,400, and then that collection will be tickling, because if that tenant doesn't owe anything, then you can make them bankrupt. But when do you get money back?
Well, yeah, look, don't forget the £1,400 is to evict a tenant. It's not to collect your money. That's something separate. Yeah.
Okay.
Debt recovery is a separate procedure. £1,400 is to get your tenant out, get you a money order, get your property back. That's the key. That's the priority. Once you get your money order, you've got 6 years to enforce it. You know, the debt is. So what I'm saying to you is, unless you know where the tenant moves to, because most tenants owing you money won't tell you where they're going to move to, obviously. Yeah. If you have an next of kin, you have got a guarantor, then you've got half a chance of trying to get something back. You know, and tenants have gone, they move, trying to collect debt from a tenant that's moved abroad, waste of time, you know, because then you have to transfer the judgment abroad, and then you have to go under various different jurisdiction laws, of course. It's very, very hard collecting debt against ex-tenants. So it's about how quickly you jump on it, you know, making sure the rent arrears don't accrue, making sure that, you know, that the tenant can't make an excuse that there is a problem with the property and everything is up to spec, you know. And that, you know, yes, the guarantee, the deposit isn't a deposit scheme. The problem you've got now is because of COVID-19, everything is out of a landlord's hands. So there are rent arrears of you know, I've got landlords that have become homeless because they can't get their property back. They're sleeping on people's couches. You know, you've got to realise we have horrendous space. You know, we've done the best part of 45,000 cases in 20 years. You know, we're one of the biggest companies that do this. And of course, we have really tragic stories as well, landlords and tenants, you know, scenarios that happen. So, yeah, you take a view and you try. And as an agent, you've got to gather information. You've got to give that information and be up to date as best you can. Because we get a lot of complaints about letting agents, as you can imagine, especially the property redress scheme, where, you know, they don't do the recovery. That, you know, they don't provide the information on the referencing. They haven't updated the referencing information because circumstances have changed and it's out of date, you know, and what you're paying a full management fee for, you know, the management of the tenant. And if it goes into financial problems, an agent should still be aware of.
Okay, cool. Got one other quick question, if I may.
Yeah.
This is, I'll just read the question out. I have a landlord legal cover with Liverpool, Victoria. Should I use them to serve Section 8 as Section 21 already served? So should I use Liverpool to Victoria for progressing?
Well, hold on. Are they right? So they've got what? They've got a rent guarantee policy with them. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah.
I mean, normally what happens? I mean, we act for a really big insurance company. We do their evictions and we do their mediation. We do a lot of work for rent guarantee companies. I mean, obviously, if this individual, whoever they are, if they want us to help, they could request for us to take over the case. I mean, the problem you've got, if an eviction notice has been served now, just run with it, because what will happen is, if you have to serve a notice. And you can serve a Section 8 and Section 21 together at the same time, do it, because they're both 3 months, yeah? But if he's served a notice and it's going to run out in a month's time, well, then it's pointless serving another notice because you just want to issue the claim as quickly as possible, whatever it may be. And if there's rent guarantee, well then, if there's rent guarantee under the terms of business, it might say you have to do a Section 8 notice so they can get a money order because, of course, the insurance company will pursue the tenant because they should be paying, obviously, the landlord out. But there has been quite a few rent guarantee companies that have not paid out because of COVID-19, and obviously the business interruption clauses, and obviously the suspension in the evictions at courts. They're refusing to pay rent guarantee. So there's been issues with that. I mean, obviously other issues, like I said, in the industry, you know, you've also seen guaranteed rent to rent. I mean, you know, I've been quite critical of that industry because it's a bit like the Wild West. And actually, if you look out for my new show, you will see I exposed 2 dodgy guaranteed rent-to-rent estate agents in East London. So watch out for that as well. So, you know, I think a lot more landlords now will entertain doing direct deals with councils and 3 to 5 year leases. I see a lot more of that happening because they're worried about the type of tenants they might have, or they might end up losing their jobs, and they want the tenants to be the councils. So I see a lot of that happening. But the worst affected market I can see in the resi market has been the student market, without a doubt, and obviously a knock-on effect of the HMOs.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's all the questions. Anything else you want to cover, Sharka? Do you want to talk about?
I think that's pretty much it. I was actually talking. I think that I covered everything through the conversation that I was having with Paul. And I think I'm also mindful of the time that we have overrun, and I do like to be on time with the things. So I think it's been quite a lot of information. I would like to again thank you, Paul, for coming, for making time. Obviously, your slide has been up, so for all people who have been on the webinar, if you've got any concerns and you want to speak to Paul, to get in touch with him, or you can get in touch with myself, and I can put you in touch with Paul, whichever.
Yeah, I'm happy to give you my email address. Anyone's got any issues or they need help relating to any of our services, i.e. if they want me to put in touch with someone at Landlord Insurance or anything like that, or any of those brands underneath, you can email me at paul@landlordaction.co.uk, and quite, with pleasure you can follow me on the social networks on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all that stuff. All right?
Fabulous.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Paul. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Damien, as well, for taking questions or organizing it. And I think that's all from us.
Fantastic.
Okay, pleasure. Thank you. Keep safe, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye now.